So again, thank you everybody for joining us. I'm Olivera Ivana, I also go by Oya, whatever's easier for you. And then I'm joined by Dr. Melissa Cano. And thank you so much, Dr. Cano, for being with us today. I know it is your day off, and I appreciate it because we wouldn't be anything without your scientific brain. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. So we are an Austrian company that was founded at the University of Graz, which is pictured here. And our role at Longevity Labs is to translate longevity research into accessible products. And we do this by collaborating with over 200 universities and labs around the globe. And the one research study that got us started was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And this study followed 826 men and women between the ages of 40 and 80 for 20 years. And over these 20 years, these researchers looked at 146 different nutrients. And the one nutrient most predictive of longevity was spermidine. Higher spermidine intake was associated with a lower risk of all major causes of death. Think heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes. So how big of an effect was this? The difference in death rate was as if those eating more spermidine were 5.7 years younger. So a higher spermidine intake meant that they had effectively turned back the clock nearly 6 years. The findings were so extraordinary that before publication, the researchers replicated the study with a totally different group of individuals, and indeed they arrived at the same conclusion. The one nutrient most predictive of longevity is spermidine. These researchers, one of these researchers also helped start this company, Professor and Dr. Frank Madeo. He is part of our scientific board. And as you can see, our board is made up of some of the most intelligent people and most respected in their fields all over the world, from Harvard and Oxford. And they join our mission. We believe we can add more healthy years to your lives. And we'll explain this, how we can do this right now.
Oh, okay. So I will try to make it as digestible as possible. So, but please feel free to chime in if you want more explanation. If I go too fast, I'll be happy to just adjust. But just to go straight to the point, what is spermidine? It's a small molecule. You can see it here. It has only 7 atoms of carbons. It's called a polyamine because it has 3 amino group. Amino group is just a chemical group that has nitrogen in it. So you can see it has 3 of them. It's part of this family of polyamine. It's found in every living organisms and cells, and it's absolutely essential for cellular function, meaning that if I was magically able to remove all the spermidine of your body at once, your cell would not be able to function, and eventually you would die. So it's because it's found in every living organism and cells, it's found in every food, so it's an important part of our nutrition. It's found at different amounts. About a third of our daily needs of spermidine come from dietary intake. So either your food or if you take a supplement. You need about 6 to 12 milligrams. So this is more or less what's found in a normal Western diet. It can go up to 20 milligram in more Mediterranean zone, blue zones where people have more plant-based diet rich in fiber. Here are some of the spermidine-rich foods. You will find in peas, nuts, cruciferous, apples and pears, also aged cheese, and natto, which is not something we consume a lot in the US in general, in the world. It's a fermented dish in Japan that is made out of soybeans, but it's very rich in spermidine. But at the top of this is actually wheat germ, which is also not something that people usually consume, but it's one of the most concentrated source of spermidine in the natural world. And this is what we use at Longevity Lab to make our supplements. So about a third of your daily need, you need to take it from food. Another third, your cells are actually capable of producing some of it using other amino acid. And the last third comes from your bacteria in your gut. They represent about a third too of your daily needs. So all these participate in this general pool of spermidine in your body that goes through your blood circulation to all the tissues and all the cells. Why are we looking at this as a longevity molecule? Because it declines with age for different reasons. One, we absorb less as we age. We also eat a bit less as we age. And also some enzyme necessary to make it, they start declining as we age. So don't function as well. Also, your gut microbiome changes as you age. So less production of spermidine through your bacteria. So that's why it's an important molecule to look at when you start getting into your 40s, 50s to make sure you eat enough of it. So the good food, and you will know all those good foods we should be eating, but also to think about supplementing because it can really give you an edge in your health. So what does it do exactly? It does this cellular cleanup mechanism that is called autophagy. And I'm going to get into a visual representation of what that is so you can grasp how important it is to your cellular health. So this is a cell of your body. You are made up of 30 trillion cells. Most of them are going to rely on this process of cleaning up the junk inside. So inside your cells, there are a lot of things happening at once. A lot of proteins making biochemical reaction, a lot of organelles, which are those components that are perform specific function, including mitochondria. You may have heard of those. Those are the powerhouse of your cell. They're going to produce among other things, produce ATP to power all the energy demanding reaction in your body. And so you have all those components that are constantly being made anew, used, and they get damaged. They get damaged and you need to get rid of them. Also, as you age or because of some disease, they also, when they are made up, they're not made up correctly. And those defective components, your cells need to be able to get rid of them. Otherwise, they just create a literal physical clutter that impair the functioning of everything else in the cell. So autophagy, it really is just the simple formation of this vesicle. It's not simple, but like simply made up. It's the formation of this vesicle around those defective components. And your cell are able to attach to it another vesicle full of enzymes that are going to digest all the components and just use the elements from which it was digested to make things anew. So it's just a cleanup mechanism that needs to happen at all time. And when it works well, your cells stay healthy, they function properly, they use energy efficiently, and aging slows down. But when it's impaired, as it happens as we age, as spermidine levels decline, then that's when you start having this clutter building up. So junk builds up, creates inflammation, that creates the foundation for developing disease. So not all diseases are caused by an impairment of autophagy, but most disease correlates at some point with an impairment of this process that doesn't keep up with the cleaning up of the cells, so the cell doesn't function properly. So please don't leave. I'm going to give you a slide that is like very intense of what spermidine does exactly, but I promise it's just to show you that this has been very well elucidated and we know exactly how it works. But spermidine can enter your cell when you intake it through your food or your diet, and it's going to attach itself to this protein that is a translation factor that is essential to translate some proteins important to perform functions in your cell. And what it's going to do is directly attach itself. So it's not just an indirect effector. It's going to attach itself and activate it. And once activated, it's going to create a cascade of reaction that is going to lead to the expression of all the elements that you need to make this autophagy process happen. So it's a direct activator of autophagy. There are other sideway pathway. We know it works too to activate this. I'm not going to get into detail. If you're ever interested in really dissecting this, I'll be happy to take you through the presentation at another moment. But I'm trying to make it a little bit straight to the point here that we know how it works. And it's by the direct expression of this, the structural elements necessary to form this autophagosome, which is the structure that allows autophagy. Another important thing that it does, it also, through the activation of this protein, allow the translation, so the expression of proteins are important to make up new mitochondria, so which is this organelle here that is important to synthesize ATP and other metabolites. So not only does it do autophagy, which is the cellular cleanup of mechanism, which includes mitophagy, but it also helps with the biogenesis of new mitochondria. So it keeps your mitochondria healthy So just to show you how it compares to other caloric restriction mimetic, you may have heard this term. So what we say when we talk about caloric restriction mimetic, they're just compounds, molecule that are going to be sensed by your cell as a signal that there's not enough nutrients. I'm going to just get into it quickly. You may have heard of rapamycin, metformin, resveratrol, less of a caloric restriction mimetic, but it could be in some aspects of it. And why do we call them like this? Because, for example, rapamycin, that you may have heard of, is able to inactivate mTOR. So this is your nutrient sensing pathway. When your cells see there's enough nutrient, enough energy, what they want to do is they want to divide and proliferate. That's usually the point of, if there is a point of life to a cell, is to divide and proliferate. If your cell senses there's not enough nutrient and energy, it's not able to divide. So what it's going to do is going to rely on autophagy to recycle what's already there to be able to sustain itself. So mTOR is really this nutrient sensing pathway. When there's enough nutrient coming up to your cell, sensed by those receptors here, it's activated and the cell divide. If it's inactivated, your cell activates autophagy. And that's what rapamycin does by inactivating mTOR. Same as metformin. You may have heard of it, activates AMPK, which activates autophagy, and resveratrol through the sirtuin pathway does the same. Why am I showing you this? It's just that you see that at the end, all those caloric restriction mimetic at different level of the activation of this autophagy process, they converge towards the same effect. So we know that autophagy is essential to maintain a proper cellular balance, so we call it homeostasis, and that spermidine is a direct trigger of it, and it triggers it safely. Why safely? Because if you compare it to rapamycin and metformin, which are not natural molecules that we already ingest every day, spermidine is natural, and there is no side effects to using it. But maintaining level is critical. So we know the main action of spermidine is activation of autophagy, but it also has some anti-inflammatory and antioxidant property that derive partly from the cellular cleanup mechanism of autophagy, but it can also directly scavenge your reactive oxygen species. So your mitochondria in your cell, you constantly have those compounds called reactive oxygen species, which are byproduct of oxygen that can really damage your lipids, your protein, and everything. And spermidine can get rid of those. So, in a similar way as vitamin C, for example. So to go back to our story, we know that spermidine decline with age, but we also know that in people older that are healthy, like people above 90, they're able to maintain a higher level compared to like people in the age group of 60 to 80. So that was already an indication that maybe a higher level of spermidine was correlated to a longer lifespan and health span. And indeed, in various preclinical studies using model organisms, so in the lab we use flies, mice, nematode, yeast, also cells, and when you supplement the diet of all those organisms with spermidine, you can extend their lifespan, so the amount of years they live, up to 20% in the case of mice, for example, in some experiments. It goes between 5 to 20, depends on the protocol, the amount, and the organism. So we know it extends the lifespan on many organisms. This was a newer study, just to show you that there's still research done even in preclinical studies with model organisms. This is in flies that shows that it extends the lifespan by at least 20% here. So do we know if spermidine work in humans? Obviously, there is not the same experiment of giving spermidine to people and seeing how much they live. First, because of ethical reason, but also we haven't had enough time to study this. But we do know from epidemiological studies that a higher spermidine intake is linked to a lower mortality. And that's what Olia was talking about at the beginning of this presentation, which is this very important study that was a bit the foundation of the whole story of the company, that studied this town in Italy called Bruneck over 20 years, and they were above 800 people. People were above 50, and they separated in three groups: people that consumed a high amount of spermidine per day, a medium amount, and a low amount. And they basically looked how many deaths happened throughout those 20 years, how many were related to cardiovascular diseases, cancer death, etc. And what they saw, so this is the amount of people that died through the studies, but so people that were intaking the highest amount of spermidine, so above 12 to 15 milligrams, so above that, maybe up to 18 milligram, they had a lower occurrence of death. So basically all those squares to the left of this line show that that's a reduction of death by almost 24% for vascular mortality, cancer, and non-vascular, non-cancer related mortality. So higher spermidine intake, lower mortality of all cause. Also correlated to those people to an extended lifespan of about 6 years. So that's an epidemiological study, shows a correlation, not a causation, but still that's a pretty important connection that was made. And in the same study, they actually analyzed all the nutrients, the main nutrients found in food, and spermidine really came out at the top with the strongest association with lower mortality. So above folate, for example. So it was a strong effect that showed that it was the most important molecule in our food to be associated with longevity. So what does it do exactly in terms of health benefits? Because this process of cleaning up the cell is essential to cellular function, and all the cells of your body are going to benefit from functioning better, it's going to have plenty of beneficial effects. Obviously on aging, on longevity, I talked about this, but it's going to have neuroprotective effects too, because a lot of issues with neurodegenerative disease come from an actual impairment of recycling old proteins that are impairing the functioning of your neurons. So we have actually had one of the first clinical trial using our product that was done on people with early onset of dementia. And supplementation showed an improvement in cognitive performance. So it has also shown improvement in reduction in tremors in a very small pilot trial in people that have Parkinson's disease. Also have cardioprotection effect. There's plenty of literature, preclinical studies on this, and some clinical, so in humans, coming up as well that show reduction in high blood pressure, increased mitochondria activity, so increased cellular respiration, protection for the metabolism. I can get into this a little bit later if we have time on type 2 diabetes. It can help mitigate it, improves glucose tolerance, protection of the musculoskeletal system. So your cells are going to be able to function better. It creates more stem cells. It improves bone density. And there's also less age-related muscle loss as well. Protects the immune system. That's a very interesting one, and I'll show you a specific slide about it. And also improvement of more exterior features, which is usually what people notice the first when they start supplementing, on top of an overall well-being, better well-being, is going to be the skin, the hair, and the nail that are going to feel probably stronger, maybe grow a little bit faster. And sometimes even in hair, it can help with repigmentation. And the reason is that spermidine, by activating autophagy, it helps your hair follicle go back into the anagen phase, which is the dividing phase, where it starts producing melanin again. So it can help with this. So cellular health, so the health of all your cells, is equivalent to your whole body health, so systemic health. That's why it has so many various health benefits that have been studied and are still being studied. This is a visual representation of some of the clinical trials that have specifically used our product. So I've talked about neuroprotection, neurodegeneration, cardioprotection, blood pressure, the immune system. There's also a study that showed improvement in skin texture that led to a partnership with this cosmetic company called Young Goose. You can check them out. They use our extract into their cream for their formulation. And so what I want you really to take out of this is that you've probably seen a lot of longevity supplement out there, and some are very legit molecules to think about including into your routine. But one of the things that I think stands out with spermidine, it really is the fact that it's one of the safest. And actually, this specific study from 2020 here in biogerontology may put it at the top of the safest longevity supplement out of 124 analyzed. And the reason is pretty simple, is because you already ingest it every day. It's in all your foods. So this is a study that compared 124 different longevity compounds, and using the scientific literature, they measured the extension of lifespan versus the amount of side effects that were reported or known or studied. And spermidine showed the best trade-off between lifespan extension and the least amount of side effects, because there's a very low probability of having any at dietary doses, which is what we propose. So just beware of synthetic compound out there that the quality can be questionable, but also the amount of it. So we still have plenty of time, so I can take you through a little bit tour of the latest in the brightest in the scientific literature, and especially I think this study that is that has become very critical, I feel, to the field of spermidine, that came out last year in Nature Cell Biology. So that showed the clear connection between fasting, spermidine, and longevity. And so exactly what they showed in this study, they showed in yeast, but in human as well for the first time, that when you fast, when you go through a caloric restriction, whether short or long term, so intermittent fasting or long term over, I think it was 2 days in humans, your body naturally produces more spermidine, which then activates autophagy, which is where you get most of the benefits from fasting by activating this cellular cleanup mechanism. There is other benefits from fasting, also just removing calories as other benefits, but the main benefits from it is actually the activation of autophagy and cleaning up the junk inside. So this paper was very foundational because he unequivocally showed that when you fast, the reason you activate autophagy is because of spermidine. And indeed, when they looked into yeast and removed their ability to make spermidine, make them go through a caloric restriction, they were not able to activate autophagy. So spermidine is not just an activator of autophagy, it's the main mediator, enabler of activating autophagy in your body. So this is a bit of a visual representation of the outcome of this paper, which showed that as you age, so that wasn't shown in the paper, but that's what was suggested of it, that as you age, we know that levels decline in most tissues in your body, which is correlated to a decrease in this process of cleaning up cells, autophagy, which leads and participates in the aging process. When you fast, and you need to have spermidine, so you can either supplement or just fast, but your body needs to be able to make enough spermidine. So that's the important caveat here. Then you are able to sustain autophagy, and that's what leads to the benefits of extension of health span, which are the healthy amount of years in your life, and your lifespan, so the amount of years you live. Another interesting study that I would love to share, because it also came out a few months ago. This is preclinical. So preclinical is only model organisms, so this specifically in mice. But I think it's very promising for potential future clinical trials, which show that spermidine have similar effect to estrogen therapy in mice that were in menopause. So what they did is they took mice, they removed their ovaries to mimic the lack of estrogen and the menopause condition. And then they either gave them treatment, so an injection of estrogen, or they were giving them oral spermidine. So they would just more spermidine in their water. And what they saw is that the effects from spermidine supplementation were comparable to those of estrogen therapy. So exactly what does it mean? When an organism goes through menopause, so the lack of estrogen leads to a bunch of cardiometabolic issue. One of which is like, this is a picture of a mitochondria, so those little organs I showed you before. And you can see this is the mitochondria of a mice that is in menopause. where the membrane inside, where all those important production of ATP and other metabolites happen, they're very damaged and they're like completely destructured. They don't work as well, basically. And there's an actual visual representation of this, as you can see under transmission electron microscopy. When they supplement them, those mitochondria were able to basically regenerate their cell, improve their structure, so and function better. The same way with spermidine, as you can see here, or with estrogen, as you can see here. And other parameters they looked at, spermidine supplementation was able to reduce oxidative stress. So this is OS here. OE is going to be estrogen. Was able to improve the production of antioxidant enzyme, reduce cholesterol levels, which happens in menopause often because of this lack of estrogen, in the same way as estrogen therapy. As you can see, those bars are almost exactly the same, the white one. One is spermidine and one is estrogen. So reduction of insulin level, insulin resistance, and inflammation was comparable in both conditions. So that's a very interesting paper. Again, by means of activating autophagy, improving mitochondrial function, spermidine is able to offer cardiometabolic protection. Another interesting paper that came out last year as well that linked spermidine to diabetes or mitigating diabetes. So you all know diabetes is a huge health crisis right now. 500 million have type 2 people have type 2 diabetes, projected to keep increasing. We all know the contributing factors: poor diet, inactivity, obesity. So when this leads to insulin resistance, which leads to hyperglycemia, and the hyperglycemia, so the constant high blood glucose, leads to the formation of compounds that damage the vascular system, basically. So the hyperglycemia leads to vascular damage, which are the complications that are the issues of diabetes at the end of the day. Because in itself, the glucose, you wouldn't mind if it wouldn't do anything damaging, but the real damage is the destruction of the vascular tissue. So kidney failure leads to blindness and overall reduced life expectancy. Well, there's a paper that came out last year, again in Nature, that showed, and I'm going to go a little bit faster here, just because we don't need to go into detail, but there is a new molecule that was identified in this paper, and I'm just going to pass this quickly, that showed that spermidine can attach itself to it the same way it attached to this other protein I mentioned before that activates autophagy, where spermidine can do the same thing with this one. And this one, you want to inactivate it, because otherwise it leads to a cell death with a ton of inflammatory factors that participate to the vascular damage caused by diabetes. So spermidine can link itself and completely inactivate this necroptosis, so this cell death with the inflammation. What they saw in this paper too, so there were a ton of experiments done in mice, but also in humans, they saw that in humans, in their kidney tissue of people that had type 2 diabetes, they had very low amount of spermidine and a very high amount of these activated molecules. So there was a correlation between not having enough spermidine and having too much of this protein activated that was leading to those vascular damage. And what they did in mice this time is they gave them a ton of spermidine, mice that had type 2 diabetes, and they were able to mitigate the vascular damage. So looking very promising that boosting spermidine could help mitigate the fight against type 2 diabetes. But overall, there's also a very huge wealth of literature that shows that spermidine can help fight in general metabolic syndrome that include obesity. And the reason, I'm not going to get into detail, but there's many studies that show that spermidine can actually help by means of activating autophagy most of the time, but also helping the expression of specific protein. It can help boost fast burning by activating basically the energy expenditure of your cell through a whole hormone signaling pathway I'm not going to get into, but it also helps limit fat accumulation, and it can help restore gut health and reduce inflammation. if you remember at the beginning, I told you had some anti-inflammatory properties, which this has been shown in many papers, but it can also help improve gut health. And the reason it helps improve gut health is because spermidine can favor the growth of beneficial bacteria that in turns produce more spermidine. And so some papers have actually shown that spermidine supplementation can help improve gut barrier function, so like your gut health, but also like the functioning of your gut barrier. It can help decrease body weight in mice, decrease insulin resistance, and just overall reduce inflammation. So one last thing I want to talk about before getting into a couple last slides about clinical trials is that there is a very healthy virtuous cycle with spermidine in gut health, which is what I mentioned before, that spermidine favor the growth of beneficial bacteria that in turns are going to produce more spermidine and facilitating the production of even more spermidine, because if you remember, you do rely on your gut microbiome, on your bacteria to produce spermidine. So altogether, they help reduce inflammation and promote resilience for healthy aging. So one thing I want to get into, so just bear with me, we only have a couple more slides about science, and then I promise I'm done. But one of the latest clinical trial that I've been using our product, and also disclaimer, we don't pay for those clinical trials because it costs too much money, but because of historical reasons and reputation, most labs, when they want to do clinical trial using spermidine, they actually reach out to us and we provide the supplement. So this clinical trial, this is a preprint. So like in science, you have a peer review process where people need to assess the quality of the paper. This is still in peer review, but it should get out, we hope, by the end of the year officially. But it's available publicly, but still it's kind of a... Let's say it's kind of a secret. I'll keep it just for you here. But this clinical trials show that spermidine can help rejuvenate, so renew immune cells and improve vaccine response in older adults. So what they did is they took people that were 65 and older. They gave them the COVID vaccine and 6 milligrams per day of spermidine for 13 weeks. And what they saw is that in their blood, it reduced the amount of senescence marker, increased the autophagy process in their immune cells. And at the end, what it did, it improved the production of antibodies to the COVID vaccine. So this is actually a very important problem in people that are older, is that they're called often non-responders to vaccine, meaning that you can give them the vaccine, but their immune response is not strong enough to have enough antibodies to be efficient. That's a huge problem. So there's a lot of research to look for adjuvants to help boost their immune response. And so this clinical trial has shown that spermidine could be a very good adjuvant for all the people to maximize their immune response. So what they saw is an increase of 75-fold of antibodies to the COVID vaccine in people that were taking the supplement. And the interesting thing is they only take it for 13 weeks, but the improves production of a protection was extended for almost 9 months. So it was like a long-lasting effect. And the other one that's also very interesting, same thing, it's in peer reviews. So preprint, it's in the process of being peer reviewed. It was a clinical trial using people with mild symptom of depression, and they were given spermidine orally every day. And what they saw in this paper is that they were able to basically decrease depression symptoms. So the whole study showed that chronic stress, the excess amount of cortisol, completely disrupt the metabolism of polyamine, including spermidine, which leads to a reduction in autophagy, and so the neurons don't function as well, and that participates to the depression symptoms. And so spermidine can restore autophagy in people that were taking it so it was, they analyzed their circulating white blood cells in depressed patients, and they saw that spermidine supplementation increased autophagy and that it improved the depressive symptom after just 3 weeks of taking 6 milligram a day, so which is pretty significant. So there's a follow-up study to the previous one, the COVID vaccine, using the flu vaccine that is showing similar beneficial effects of spermidine supplementation. And there's also a follow-up study on this one that is gonna compare spermidine supplementation with actual pharmacological treatment that much more aggressive. So just to compare the effect to continue the exploration of spermidine protection for depression. So with this, I will leave Olia take you through some of our products, and we can also dive into some questions after that.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Melissa. So we are starting with our star product. Our star product is our Spermidine Pro. And the reason why it's our star product is because it has 6 milligrams of spermidine in it. So all of our products contain our extract. They're all the same powder, 100% clean and natural, just different ways to take it. The 6 milligram is our best because we are the only spermidine company currently on Earth that has the European novel food approval. And in Europe, the recommended or the allowed amount right now is 6 milligrams of spermidine per day. So this is by far the cleanest spermidine you can get. It comes in a pack of 30 of these sachets, and sachets are great for those who don't like taking pills or capsules, super convenient when you're traveling or on the go. So this is definitely the one we recommend, at least to start out with the 6 milligrams to really kickstart your body into autophagy. Then we have the same product, but in 3 milligram doses. So this is also a 1-month supply. Each one of these sachets has 3 milligrams of our spermidine, which has our Salvio extract, and also super convenient on the go and when you're traveling. And then we know many people, especially in the longevity field, are really into NAD. And we actually have a patent on the synergistic effects of NAD and spermidine, because there has been shown that this can combine for really good cardioprotection. So in each of these NAD sachets, there's also 1 milligram of our spermidine, and it is just really great if you need the extra energy boost throughout the day. And we just hope you remember more spermidine is more life. So let us know if there's any questions we can help answer. If we can help you, your family, and your friends add healthier years to your lives, I think it's a great mission. And we thank you for joining us today, especially it being a Friday. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, a great weekend, and thank you again for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.